Today, we're going to be looking at how you can use the data dashboard for finding municipal finance data and exploring the context that those data sets can provide in your stories to give more meaning and more resonance to your audiences. We're just about to turn things over to Reg, but I also do want to just share with you real briefly a quick video. I'm going to put the link for it into the chat as well. We're going to watch a short video about using the elections dashboard so that you get, just for those of you who are very familiar with it, super brief recap. And if you haven't used it yet, we want to give you a taster of what it is and what the possibilities are. So let's take a look at that real quick.
The SANEF election dashboard is an effective and responsive toolset providing context and facts for journalists reporting on the upcoming local government elections. It is a great tool to get a feel for an area. Interactive map allows the user to view data on a national, provincial, municipal, and even ward level. Clicking a province will focus the map and show the constituting districts or metros, and clicking again will show the relevant municipalities. The breadcrumbs is a simple way to navigate back, and the search bar allows searching down to a ward level. The data mapper allows us to easily see the representative range of an indicator. It shows us where an indicator is more or less intense. The rich data tool gives us more tables and charts that are not necessarily represented on the map. It is particularly useful on a municipal level. We can see the various factors that influence and affect a community, from previous election results and municipal spending to demographics and education.
Thank you very much, and I would like to welcome everybody on behalf of SANEF. And I'm really glad to see so many journalists joining us, in particular all the community media journalists who are really our experts in municipal coverage. I want to just give you an idea of why we're doing all of this at SANEF. So SANEF in the previous election started with efforts to provide journalists with reporting resources and lots of training. In fact, if you go to the SANEF website, sanef.org.za, you can find on the programs still access to our 2019 election resources, as well as the upcoming local elections in that link, or if you scroll down, there's a big link here that you can also use. On the 2019 elections, we still have all the materials that we offered, so you can always come back if you need that. But we launched our local elections training portal beginning of July. Already we have many people who's been contributing to it. So if you click through to it or go directly to elections.sanef.org.za, you land on our portal and you'll find there a whole host of resources for journalists to report on local government, on municipal finance, on other data around local government, and of course on the elections. So apart from what you see on the landing screen, if you go into the menus on this page, you'll find all kinds of training modules that will be the subject of webinars held and those that's still coming up. There's a whole section then on reporting resources, election disinformation, party funding, safety of journalists, regulatory framework, and so on. All the stuff that you need if you want to report on the elections. And of course, the elections dashboard, which we'll partly deal with in the session today. So we launched our training, election training last week. We already had the one on how the elections work Last Tuesday, last Friday, we had a session on telling local government stories with data. And after today, so this will be the last session for August, we're still looking at final dates for the remaining sessions, the role of the media during elections, disinformation, safety of journalists, and then telling stories with election data that will come sometime in September. What we are also doing so that people can go back to the resources, for instance, on the first webinar, you can go to the SANEF YouTube channel and you can find the segments that we dealt with, including a really good overview presentation from the IEC on their preparations for the elections, and also input from senior editors giving tips on how to do election coverage and about stories and so on. So we will do the same for all the webinars. So check back and you'll find playlists with the segments from last Friday's data dashboard session and today's session. So watch it. I think by end of the week or so, we should have all of that up. So today's focus is on municipal finance. For those of you who attended last week, I explained that a recipe for election coverage would be the 4 P's of election coverage: the people, the places, the parties, and the process, meaning the electoral process. And the municipal finance is pretty much about the places where people live. It's about how they are run. Are they run well? Are they not? How does it impact on people's lived experiences? Are they getting electricity or not? Are the potholes full or not? Because municipal finance gives you access to all those stories, and our colleagues will share that with us. First up will be Reg Romney, and this is an article that he published last week in Daily Maverick, where he specifically used these kinds of numbers that we're going to do today to do a story about how Cape Town and Joburg are run from a financial perspective. Following that, we will then get an overview of where you can find the numbers in our dashboard, which will be overview which will be given by Raymond Joseph, who also happened to be one of the recipients of SANEF's Nat Nakasa Award for courageous community journalism with his series of stories on the lotteries. But apart from that, he really is the data journalism guru that we have in this country. So we're very glad that he will then also assist. And then we'll also hear from Akandiwe Saba, who is deputy editor of the Mail and Guardian and who's been doing really, really good data and municipal finance stories in previous elections. So she will join us a little later. Finally, I just want to say thanks to Open Up, which designed the data dashboard and played a crucial role in bringing this training program together. SANEF is working with them because they know journalism. They've been working with many news organizations before. They understand open data, and they grounded in the Constitution, and that's similar to what we're doing at SANEF. So welcome everybody, and I think we can jump right in. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Reg Romney. I'm an economics and financial journalist really by profession. Before becoming a teacher of economics journalism at Rhodes University, I'm also a researcher. I'm now an honorary research associate at Rhodes University. But it's really my experience of reporting on budgets for 10 years. For 10 years, I reported on national budgets for both the Mail and Guardian and SABC. And it was after that that I became interested in municipal finance, because I moved to Makonda, that is Grahamstown, and had a column for Grocot's Mail, which involved municipal finance. And I started to look at municipal finance, particularly because I was feeling the effects of poor financial management at the municipal level, living in Makonda, with frequent water outages, frequent power cuts, and refuse in the streets, bad maintenance, and so forth and so on. And it got me interested in the fact that actually coverage of finance at the municipal level hasn't been very good. In an election year like this, you'll see a lot more. But generally speaking, I mean, in all my years in journalism, I think I might have gone to one budget presentation by the Joburg municipality. And in some years, it's been so bad that Joburg municipality has had to take out ads about its budget. There's been no coverage at all, which I think is a really bad thing, because municipal services is where the rubber hits the road, as it were, or the potholes in the case of many municipalities. It's really, really important. And follow the money. That's a general journalistic principle. And there's a lot of information available about public finance in South Africa. I don't think that people realize quite how much there is available. And we must remember that nationally, our budget process has been recognized as the best in the world, along with New Zealand's. And that filters down. There's an enormous amount available. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a high-level view of where the various municipal pieces fit in, and where you can find stories from that eventually. Now, Ray Joe will look specifically at the tools you need to find finances. So I'm going to give a presentation now. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, then we'll go to, okay, there we go. Okay, full screen. Start the slideshow. Okay, all right. So I must say that when I started to look at municipal finances, I realized that actually I hadn't really understood a lot of where local government fits in to the general scheme of things. And I think that for many journalists, the national has been more important than local government. We've been quite obsessed with national government for a very good reason, that when democracy eventually arrived, we started to, our focus was on the national government, on collapsing all the Bantustans, on making a nation again from this supposedly this balkanized state of having supposed homelands all over the place. But I think that now we're beginning to realize the importance of the local level. So where does local government fit in? So the first thing that is supposed to be cooperative governance. In fact, there are three levels: national, provincial, and local, and they're supposed to cooperate, and they do. It's decentralized government. In other words, in theory, closer to the people. In other places, national government tells the local what to do. And in fact, in Singapore, there isn't a local government. There's only one level, and that's national, but that's a city-state in a small island. Generally speaking, around the world, we have layers. But the important thing about the South African model is that it's supposed to be developmental, and that's very important. In other words, it's not just a question of putting in rules. It's supposed to be, local government is also supposed to raise people up, get a better life for all, have more equality, make sure the poor don't suffer, and so forth. And hence, municipalities get a share of national revenue. Okay, so of the amount of money, national revenue, which is mainly tax, most of it goes to national and provincial. And a small amount, about 9%, goes to local. And that money, and we'll look at that in detail later, that money is supposed to provide basic services for people. That's it. Basic, a certain amount of water and electricity is supposed to be provided free to poor people. And we'll see that can be sometimes a problem. And at the local level, there are the metros, and these are the big municipalities like Joburg. And then there are the district municipalities, under which are grouped several local municipalities. Some of the district municipalities have very few residents in them. There are places, the district municipality that covers the Kruger National Park, for instance, obviously has fewer people. And the district municipalities, I think, are becoming more important. But the local municipalities are the ones that I think really get left out some of the time. I mean, there's a lot of focus on the metros for very good reason. Let's go to the next slide. So these are the bigger cities. These are the metropoles. Buffalo City, City of Cape Town, Ekurhuleni, City eThekwini, Joburg, obviously, Mangaung, Nelson Mandela Metropolitan Municipality, which used to be Port Elizabeth, and the city of Tshwane. There's 8 of them, and they do take a lot of attention because they're economically very important. I mean, Joburg, for instance, contributes quite a big chunk of the country's gross domestic product. Okay, now another thing to actually keep in mind, that municipalities, though they are closer to the people and they are democratic, we vote for councillors, and the councillors supposedly decide on budgets which serve our needs. They're not completely autonomous. They are importantly governed by strong laws, actually. The first is the Division of Revenue Act. That's one that's passed every year, and it provides for this equitable share. That's that 9% of money from total revenue. The municipalities also get a share of the fuel tax, by the way, and they also get grants from the national government. Then there's the Municipal Structures Act, which provides for ward committees. To what extent those work, I'm not sure. But the really important part, really important legislation that governs municipalities is the one in the center there, the Municipal Finance Management Act, because that covers budgeting and reporting, and that's the act under which the Auditor General audits municipalities. And then we get the Municipal Property Rates Act, which regulates the power to impose taxes. So, you know, some municipalities, if they had their way, would not only have property rates, they'd also tax you for a whole lot of other things. As it is, there are other taxes other than property rates. When I was in Makonda, I was always very amused that every year in the budget there was a dog tax. There was provision for a dog tax and a small amount of revenue to be raised by the dog tax. And I never saw a single person ever being taxed for having a dog, despite the fact that Makonda had dogs running all over the place. I had a dog. Nobody ever asked me for my dog tax. But yeah, that's so municipalities can't just raise money any way they like. And then there's the Municipal Structures Act, which provides for a framework for performance management, et cetera, But that Municipal Finance Management Act is really important because it governs a whole lot of, it imposes a whole lot of regulations on how municipalities actually manage their finances. Okay, and these are the important actors. You might not be able to see all the small type, but basically the municipalities fall under the Department of Cooperative Governance, and it's actually the Cooperative Governance website, if we can pull it up at some stage. It's actually got information on particular municipalities, which is quite useful, though I think a lot of that information is also on the dashboard. SOLGA represents local government, and how effective it is, well, I'll leave that up to you to decide. And then there's National Treasury, which actually oversees the whole thing. National Treasury is a very powerful department, and it keeps a very close eye on municipalities from a finance point of view. And it's also a really incredibly good source of information. The information on the municipal money website that I'm sure Ray will be talking about comes from the National Treasury. It oversees the budgets, the national budget, but it oversees the budget process of the municipalities, and it administers the Municipal Finance Management Act. And then the other important act is the Auditor General, that audits and reports on the financial statements and the performance of all municipalities. And every year the Auditor General puts out a really interesting report, which we'll also talk about. Okay. So this is municipal income. I apologize for the complexity of the graph, but what I'd really like to point out is that if you look here, and this is quite an issue, this was 2020, a large proportion of income of most municipalities, all municipalities, comes, I think, most of them anyway, except those that are so poor that they, or so poor at raising money that they have to rely on national government. Many municipalities anyway rely on the sales of electricity. In this aggregated graph, 26% of the money comes from the sales of electricity. It's second only to grants and subsidies. You know, most of that that's from national government. And property rates is only 16%. And then of course there's sales of water is another 11% now. And then sanitation for refuse removal, 3, and then other about 10. So that, and that's a really interesting thing. And I'll go to the next slide to have a look at that. Yeah. So this is it in bar chart form, which is a bit easier to see. The point is that that is something that has happened not by intention. I think it's because electricity has been the easiest thing to use to raise revenue. Strictly speaking, I suppose municipalities should be getting more from property rates. There's a problem with property taxes, however, because property taxes are a wealth tax and not an income tax. So you can be asset rich and income poor, which is the state I'm in. I'm living in a house that is supposedly worth quite a lot of money, according to the municipality, and they tax me on that. But my income isn't great. So it can be unfair. But the electricity issue has become quite a hot political issue because it seems, you know, there's several problems with that. And there are lots of good stories to be had about that, including the fact that as electricity prices rise, people tend to use less. This is a standard economic principle. As prices rise, people tend to be resistant. And so in Joburg, you'll see that LPG gas is being increasingly, not in Joburg, around the country. People are resorting to LPG gas for cooking. I have gas for heating and for cooking. Because, and in fact, in winter, I don't use electricity for heating at all because it is becoming increasingly expensive. And as we use less, well, where's the income going to come from for the municipalities? Because that's how they're making their money. Also, I don't have it here, but municipalities are the biggest source of income for Eskom. About 41%, I think, of their income comes from municipalities. So there's a big problem, potential problem here, but I'll leave it to you to report on that. And then what do those municipalities spend their money on? Well, that's an interesting one as well. Actually, about a third, almost a third, goes on employees, which is not unreasonable. Obviously, you need people to work. But in addition to that, sorry, that's unintentional. In addition to that, we can't really see very clearly here, but They also employ consultants. Okay, contractual services, another 8.5. Now, the problem in government generally is when you have employees supposedly doing something and then you employ contractors as well. Is that necessary? Or is it wasteful? Certainly when it comes to financial management, the Auditor General points out usually that municipalities employ people to do their budgets and their financial planning and their financial reports, while there are people in municipalities who are supposed to be competent to do that. And what is even more interesting is that the consultants that are employed by many municipalities to do their financial performance reports are not that competent anyway. So we're losing out twice. Okay. But that's where most of the money goes. And of course, if you have rising employee bills, if you have rising or agreements that employees get paid above inflation every year, then you're going to have a problem eventually, because most of the money that'll eventually, in other words, most of the of the municipal budget will be swallowed by those employee costs. It isn't that so at the moment. And then of course the purchase of electricity takes a lot of money, because that's what you're charging for. Not so much for water, though that might change. Bad debts, not too bad. Interest, not too bad. And other. Now at this stage, I would like to ask the participants, what do they think are the potential sources of revenue for municipalities? Can you sort of tell me in the chat? Does anybody have any ideas? If I can see the chat, of course. Okay. Anybody have any idea what the potential sources for revenue for municipalities, aside from the ones that I've mentioned there? Let me go back. That's the revenue, the contribution to total income. So we have property tax, sales of services like electricity and water, grants from national government. What else? Fines, yes. So that's usually at the provincial level, I must tell you. In fact, I think it is at the municipal infrastructure fund. Yeah, I think that falls under grants, NT grants. Yeah. Rental of properties, absolutely. Yeah. Licenses for certain things. Tourism, well, that's a source of revenue indirectly. And car papers and traffic fines, those are actually provincial competencies. And one of the things that I must mention is that people sometimes confuse the responsibility of municipalities and provinces. The provinces are responsible for health and education as well, largely. And certainly, I remember paying my money over to the provinces in terms of fines, not the municipalities. Refuse collection is in there. Yeah, refuse collection is another service. Business rates, well, it's the same as property rates, really. Water connection fees, that falls under services. Parks and recreation fees, not sure what that is. Parks and recreation should be free, I think. Okay, but thanks, yeah, thanks for that. Okay, and some municipalities have their own resorts. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. The really big one, which doesn't get much attention, is borrowing through municipal bonds. It used to be very big in the past. It is a source of revenue, and it used to receive a lot of attention from the financial press. Not so much anymore, but certainly much like government bonds. But in fact, I mean, really, who covers government bonds? I mean, who even how many people actually even understand the bond market. But certainly that is something we should look into. Why can't municipalities raise more money through, and the big ones I'm talking about, you know, the metros, why can't they raise more money through bonds? Okay, let me move on. Okay, so one of the really interesting questions for me was in teaching municipal finance coverage and in covering it myself is, can you look at a municipality like a business? And how do you, as an economics journalist, as a financial journalist, if I'm reporting about a municipality, can I approach it in the same way as I do business? And the answer is, well, yes and no. Municipalities do sell services like electricity, and they make money from that. They buy it wholesale, they sell it retail, and they make a margin. And they are expected to be self-sustainable. And if you look at the municipal annual statement, there's an annual report, there's an income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement. And all of this, by the way, is reflected in municipal money, which Ray will look at. And it has common business indicators such as ratios, liquidity ratios, and so forth, which are usually used for businesses. The reason is that municipalities can, and they do go bankrupt, unlike the state, which can't go bankrupt. Municipalities can go bankrupt. But municipalities are monopolies, okay? When residents can't easily change their suppliers as customers do. I suppose one way you can change your supplier of services to move to another city, which people do, and there is a kind of a steady flight from the rural areas to the urban areas for better opportunities. And I'm an example of somebody who's left the rural areas to come to the city again, returned to Joburg. One of the reasons I did so was I couldn't stand the poor level of services in Makhanda anymore. Anyway, but most importantly, and this I think we really have to remember, that municipalities are part of South Africa's democratic system. Councils are elected and are responsible to citizens, and citizens are not customers. We are not customers. We're actually citizens of a democracy. Okay, I'm running out of time here, so let me quickly go on. All right, so one of the things I must mention is that the municipalities are in terrible trouble. We know that, and there's been a lot of reporting on that, and they're under trouble because of urbanization, failures in financial management and financial reporting, and combined with the added stresses recently of the COVID crisis, and then this, I'll call it an insurrection, it's all going to aggravate our financial problems. One of the ways of thinking about this is that the municipalities went into the COVID crisis, they already had comorbidities, okay? If you look at the Auditor General's most recent report, it shows that almost all, it shows that many municipalities are in a dire financial position. And what that means is that they're dependent on that equitable share, which is supposed to go to the poor, to balance their books. Not a good situation. Just finally, before I take some questions, I think I'm running out of time now. The municipal budget process, I just must mention, there are story opportunities at each of these levels of the municipal budget process. We start with planning, we go through to tabling of the budget, publishing the budget, then there are quarterly financial reports throughout the year, annual reports, the financials, and the audit report, very important, and then the annual financials and the auditing. Then an annual report comes out, and it should be audited, and along with it should be an audit report itself from the AG, which is always a really good source of stories. Down here we have the municipal year, which differs from both the calendar year and the tax year. So that's the tax year, starts in March. Municipal year actually starts in July and ends in June. The planning for the budget should start in July 2020. The consultation should go right through to the tabling of the budget, and the budget has to be published before the end of the financial, the municipal year. And those are the times where you can really look and get some really good stories, newsy, and also, you know, interesting, not only from immediate newsworthy point of view, but also from the point of view of the future performance of the municipality. Okay, so there's just a slide on, you know, reporting. Audit General is very important. National Treasury produces the budget review. There are integrated development plans produced by the municipality, which are supposed to shape the budget. I don't find them very useful, but they seem to be a bit airy-fairy to me. At the local, in the rural municipalities, they're often cut and paste from other integrated development plans. Anyway, that's another story. But those are some things that you can keep in mind, and there's some of the resources over there, but Ray will go into the resources in more detail. Okay, I've got more stuff I can show you, but I'm going to stop the share if I can. Okay, I'm going to stop the share.
Great. Thanks, Reg.
All right.
Do you see that
Okay.
there? Yeah. Okay. Thanks so
All
much,
right.
Reg. And I would like to encourage everybody, if you've got questions for Reg, we've got a little bit of time allocated now. We'll also have time at the very end, you know, sort of in an hour from now for more Q&A. If you've got questions now, please do go ahead and drop them into the chat. I'd like to invite our other panelists to come back on if you can. Any questions we'll put first to Reg, but there may also be some comments from the other panelists if you would like to chime in. We do have we did have a question about if you could talk a little bit more about the role of district municipality. And there was also a question about, is there a minimum standard for service delivery which holds a municipality, which the municipality must adhere to? So Reg, I'm wondering if you could.
That's an interesting question. Is there a minimum standard? Well, my experience is no. Yes, I mean that the Treasury is supposed to, you know, ensure that the municipalities do actually do service delivery. But is there, you know, you're talking about consequence. What is the consequence for a municipality that doesn't do its job? Okay, so this is, I must mention that we tend to look at these things quite technocratically. You know, what is the consequence for the municipality not doing its job and providing services? Well, you know, the real consequence should be that the councillors are all voted out and new councillors put in, and those new councillors replacing all the officials who are not working properly. That doesn't seem to happen that way. The other consequences, well, the AG has consequences, but basically for very bad performance by particularly by the municipal manager. And of course, there are consequences for fraud, and there should be consequences for not complying with legislation. In theory, the mayor and the municipal manager should take those people responsible for not delivering and have disciplinary inquiries and so forth and so on. But that the system doesn't quite work the way I think it was envisaged. I sometimes think we really have a Rolls-Royce model of municipal management with some rather dodgy Alfa Romeo backyard mechanics doing the running. Anyway, no, I don't think there's a minimum level, but I mean, obviously you're not supposed to not deliver services, and that's it. What was the other question? Sorry, was about.
If you could talk about the role of the district municipality.
The district, yes. Look, I think that initially the district municipalities used to cover areas where there weren't many people, and you know, the local municipalities were not very populous either. So they were just a grouping. Now they are supposed to give aid to the local government in capacity building and various and finances. But you know how I'm not sure how that works when they don't really have much of an ability to raise money themselves. So I know that talking from my experience of covering Makhanda, at one stage we did get some aid from the district municipality or the water board that served the district municipality, but really the only aid that was forthcoming eventually was from province. Remember, the province has the responsibility to take over running from a municipality that fails. They're supposed to, they put in their own, in Makhanda, they put in their own person. That didn't really work very well. So it's province that really is responsible, but I think the ANC has some plans to use district municipalities, and they're quite complex. I did see a story on it recently in Engineering News, and I'll try and find it and share it with people. I don't have many thoughts on it, but the ANC does, so you can ask them.
Okay, thank you. You had made a comment about looking to the future and sort of using data to like predict in the future. And there's a question actually from Ray, thinking like a journalist. We're going to hear Ray's presentation in just a moment as well. But he asked a question: what would happen to municipalities that depend on bulk sales of water and electricity if they were to lose those revenue sources? So we might have an example of that from the past, but could also be used for looking for an individual municipality looking to the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, usually what happens is that municipalities fail to recover enough revenue from their residents, either through property rates, people not paying property rates, or not paying for electricity, illegal connections, or inability to pay, not paying for water. And what that means is they're actually in financial difficulty. So there are municipalities which quite a few which are threatened with bankruptcy. Actually, they may in the future not be going concerns, which means the province has to rescue in each case, and so that's one of the consequences of that. But now, if we talk about a municipality that is reasonably run and one that cannot rely on the profits from electricity particularly, and water secondly, well, they'd have to put up rates, and that's a real problem, because how much can people pay? I mean, every time rates increases are announced in Joburg, and Joburg is one of the wealthier municipalities, there's incredible resistance from ratepayers like myself. Not much we can do about it, but there's a competitive element to municipalities. So if Joburg, for instance, decided, damn it, we're not going to rely on electricity sales anymore, we're going to rely on property rates only, we're going to put up property rates immensely, doesn't matter what you say about it, well, one of the things that would happen is, property prices would fall, a lot of people would be rendered bankrupt and so forth. But the other thing that would happen is people would say, you know what, Cape Town looks like a lot better place to live, as long as Cape Town didn't do the same. So there's a competitive element to this. And in fact, even now we've seen a very interesting trend of semigration from among wealthy people, I think, from urban areas to smaller municipalities in the rest of the country, mainly in the Western Cape and sometimes in the Eastern Cape. Yeah. Any other follow-up question?
Yeah, I think we're going to leave that with that for now. And okay. I will say, Reg, you're going to stick with us for the next hour. Is that right? Yes, okay, wonderful. So I'm going to ask everybody, if you've got some questions that you didn't get to ask for Reg, or you may see that the question, something that Reg said, start to sound different when you hear the rest of our presentations, please go ahead and drop those into the chat as we go through. And we will have another Q&A section towards the end of next hour. For now, we're going to turn things over to Ray. Reg, can I ask you to stop sharing your screen so that Ray can go ahead and share his screen as well?
I'm trying. I can stop sharing. Can I just say one thing, that I haven't put up slides on the Auditor General, various aspects of the Auditor General. So if later, if people have questions about that, I can put those slides up. All right.
Great. Thank you. Backup slides.
Right. Backup slides. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Reg. Really appreciate your presentation and the questions that are coming up. Again, if you've got questions that come up and you want them to be answered by a specific person, let us know in the chat. If it's just a sort of a question that comes up for any of our panelists, that's fair game to put in the chat as well. For now, I'm going to turn things over to Ray Joseph. Take it away, Ray.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. So what I'm going to do is actually focus on a very recent story done by a colleague and friend, Steve Kretzmann, as part of a series, an ongoing series that Ground Up is doing in the run-up to the elections. And in this, he actually visited the town of Witzenberg, and not the town, the municipality in Witzenberg, which is made up of several towns, including Tilbach, Ceres, I think it's Prince Alfred. It's five different towns, but the administrative center lies in Ceres. Now, when you look at them on paper, this looks like a really well-run, great municipality. And in fact, it's only one of 27 that got a clean audit, and the Auditor General raved about them in the latest audits. And it's the old story, you know. The data tells you where to look, but the data is like any source. You need to actually go there and check against the data. And what he found is, I would say, a clean record going back over 8 years. And what he found is in the different towns, different experiences were happening. Ceres, for example, the administrative center was fantastic. It was being well looked after. Other towns, people were complaining about services. Now, if you want to see where the services are really bad, go to the poor areas. Go particularly to where the ruling party's people are living, the party that's running it. So for example, I live in Cape Town, and I live in the southern suburbs. Our roads are smooth, they tarred, they're everything. Go down the road to some of the townships and it tells a different story. Now, before I go there, so what I found, I mean, there's sewage overflowing. So very often when there's problems, you're going to find them in the townships. You're not going to find them in the city centers. So there's open sewers running into the streets in the Nduli township, just 2 kilometers from Ceres, which everyone raves about how fantastic, and there it is. But this is the paragraph that I do want to point you to. Financial health. And I will drop this story in the chat for you guys to look about it. Some very interesting links. It's got a relatively healthy cash balance of 94 million rand at the end of the municipal year. By the way, the municipal elections and the municipal financial year is out of step with province, and it's out of step with national, and it makes no sense for them to be like this. You know, they having to budget, and municipalities having budget before they've ended their financial year. So the expenditure of 96% of his capital budget reveals good budget management, although an 8.6 under expenditure of his operational budget was less impressive. So I'm going to show you where to find all this kind of stuff for your own towns, and particularly community. You know, it's very hard with the big metros and municipalities with multiple towns, because what you're getting is an overall picture. You're not able to zoom in on what's going on in a particular area. Two points of concern: 2018-19, 5% of operating expenditure was classified as unauthorized, irregular, or fruitless expenditure. There was other very low expenditure on repairs and maintenance. Ideally, it should be 8% of the property, plant, and equipment budget, but in Witzenberg case, it was 1.9%, having also been very low in 2 previous years and 2.6 in 2016-17. So let me, I'm just going to, before I continue, Becky, I just want to drop that link into the chat. Because this story is done using multiple different tools. And there is the link for you. Okay.
I think the ground up story link is already in the chat. Did you want the link to the financial report?
Oh, you put it. Oh, no,
yeah.
no, sorry.
Okay.
I didn't see that you'd put it there, Becky. I didn't realize that no flies on you. So now what I want to go to is the dashboard. Sorry, I just want to open the dashboard. My apologies about this. It was open and it seems to have dropped off.
Do you want just the main dashboard? I can put it in the chat for you if it's not coming up.
No. I'm going to put the dashboard there. I've got it. I've actually got it. Oh, I miss the days when you could sit in front of people and do training. I really do. Sorry about that. Share screen. Okay. So this is the SANEF dashboard. What I would recommend is there's another bug that's being fixed, and I've also, if you have a look, I've got loads of tabs and all that sort of thing showing. So it's best viewed F11 in a full screen. Let me just get rid of bookmarks. Okay, let's get rid of the bookmark. And I'm now going to go to Witzenberg. Now, it'll only start coming up after you've typed the first few letters. And what we are now seeing is Witzenberg is a municipality in the Cape Winelands district in the Western Cape in South Africa. So story ideas. If you have a look, and these are all the different wards, by the way, of Witzenberg. So this thing actually draws right down to ward level. So for example, so there were actually no protests in the area, but if in your area you come across, what you do is you click on the dot, you click on more info, and what you're going to get, so there was a peaceful protest there on the 16th of February. This is ACLED who has done it. So what they do is they take a news report of an incident, and a researcher with a checkbox then goes out. They classify it. They classify, was it peaceful? Was it violent? What was it about? It'll give you all the different details there. So it was a peaceful protest. That's where it was. The news source is the Argus. 26 16th of February 21, about 100 people gathered in front of the Wellington Magistrates Court in a demonstration against a man who allegedly killed his wife, the prior week, and gender-based violence in general. There were no fatalities, and it'll always go back to a data source. And what you can do, I'm not going to get lost in the weeds here, but you can let's take the protests away. And so how well is this area served with libraries? Look at that. There are only 2 libraries in this entire municipality. And there they are, right next door to each other. So this area is not very well served from a library point of view. So the source here, and this is the data mapper, by broad age groups. And as you break it down, it'll you can break it down by population group, by African. So there, what it's showing you is there 46.4% of the people in the municipality are Black. And sorry, in the different areas, and going by the colors, you'll be able to see where the concentrations are. Only in South Africa do we break it into color, by the way. Sorry. Bear with me a second. I'm using a scroll mouse, which is a bit of a hair trigger. But really the view that we want to see is this one on top. Let's just get it up to 100. There we are. And on elections, so voter turnout. And all the time, you will always see a box with an explainer. So the voter turnout, those who didn't vote, those who voted. I think I'm going to stop using the scroll mouse. Demographics. Now, with the, wherever possible, the tool uses the 2016 community survey. The 2011 census, so they're currently in the field with pilots for the 2021 survey census. It's a hell of a thing trying to do a census during a pandemic. But what they do is in between censuses, they do a community survey. This is what government uses for planning. Population groups. So households by income. So what you're looking at there is 6.4%. You can play around with values. You can select female, you can select male. Earn between 1 and so no income. 17.2% of the people who in that area have no income. So story, if they got no income, how are they earning a living? How people putting bread on the table? What are they doing? So I suspect that very many of those people have got side hustles to survive. And then there's government grants. And I would reckon that anything between 4,801 and 19,200 Rand would indicate, to me, that indicates government grants are happening there. Economic environment. How many people how many people are actually employed in this area? All the time, what you've got to do is you've got to select an attribute. You can select by gender. So what we've got is overall, and then you can look at male and female. And what I urge people to do with this kind of thing is when you go out to cover a story, you really need to do this research beforehand just to get an idea. So this stuff will add context to your story. You can always do a screen grab of this if you want to do any illustration in your story. We can look at education. We could look at highest education levels. And importantly here, what we can do difficulties currently facing this municipality. Alcohol abuse. So it's actually got quite a low level. And there's always the source, that's SA. Corruption. Cost of electricity, cost of water, drug abuse. We've got gangsterism. So very quickly, when you're writing about a muni, inadequate waste removal, lack of adequate employment, and so it goes. So there's some really rich data in here to play around. The video again will tell you. The video will always tell you. Go back to the video if you're having a problem. It's not a difficult tool to work. Once you're into the tool, it's not a difficult tool to work. So, sorry, what is happening? I need to just switch off this mouse. I've got a hair trigger mouse, which is messing with me. So here we are at the, just to go again. And I would urge you guys, once this thing has happened, once we finished with the training, it's just go and do a search on your own municipality and enrich data as we scroll down. So there is the, or what you can do is just go to summary and you'll get them all under one. So 65% of registered voters, eligible registered voters, voted. 65%, that is the number, 83.665%. Didn't vote 45,856 people didn't vote in the last municipal elections. Again, there is an explainer. You will always find explainers and sources on everything that you look at. Demographics, we had a look at the size of households. I want to go down to the financial stuff. financial performance. Now, what you can do, some of you people who are on this call know how to work with data. What you can do is save the image. So let's just say select an attribute, expenditure types, select a value, unauthorized expenditure. And there's the explainer. It shows irregular, unauthorized, and wasteful expenditure as a percentage of operating expenditure. So what happened is in 2011-12 was up to 4.6. It dropped to 0, and suddenly, and by the way, the Auditor General takes anything above 0 as bad. And suddenly almost 1% of the budget has gone to unauthorized expenditure. Again, there's the explainer. There are the years. Income sources. We were just talking about that now. So locally generated. So Reg was talking about a city like Cape Town. If it doesn't raise enough income, it's got to put up rates. But what happens in these small little towns that don't have a rate space? They don't have a lot of residents. They don't have buildings. They can't find people. They've got no other revenues. So in Witzenberg, this is quite a well-off municipality. 85% of their budget they are generating locally. Transfers, those that is coming from the national fiscus. Now, the lower the rate base, the less opportunity to raise revenue, the higher amount the central fiscus will pay to a municipality. And a lot of these small municipalities depend very heavily on generating an income through buying bulk water and electricity and selling at a profit. Where they've got into trouble is the money has gone in and they haven't paid the service provider. That is what has happened there, is what you're seeing. A breakdown of the current debt collection. So again, this is always a very good indicator to look at. Where municipality is not collecting 100% of the revenue due to them through rates, taxes, etc., that's when they start getting into the red. Some municipalities, what you will badly run municipalities, they just don't collect money, and then suddenly what happens towards the end of the financial year, they start harassing residents, they take people to court, they do all kinds of things to get money in. Spending of the capital budget. Shows the percentage by which actual expenditure fell short of the budgeted capital income for a given financial year. Again, every time there is an explainer, spending of operating budget. So the operating is for day-to-day business of the municipality. If they're not spending, listen, if you see a municipality underspending on capital, on its capital budget, and grossly underspending, you can be guaranteed there will be potholes. Sewage is not picking up. The place where it manifests itself most visibly is in the townships. Because what municipalities also do is they keep the center of town clean and in fairly reasonable condition. So visitors to the town actually see a different picture to the lived one. Again, this is household income by male, by female. The kind of homes that people are living in. So in this municipality, oh dear. And then very briefly, I just want to hop on. So all this stuff comes from a tool called Municipal Money. And this is really where you can get into the weeds. So the dashboard gives you an excellent, it gives you an excellent overview, but this is where the weeds are. Sorry, I just wanted to say, if you are doing a story and you arrive in a place and you want to know about that place, I do this when I'm traveling, it's a game. Switch on your location, use your location, and it will tell you all about the municipality in which you are, where you've stopped to put petrol as you are traveling. So, so this tool, and I'm going to whiz through it, is got all contacts for the mayor, email addresses, all the stuff that we always try to find out. All their details are there. Here is a video which explains this tool. This is all, by the way, Treasury data. So all this data, if you're someone like Reg, he goes to the Treasury site. He understands the Treasury site. If you're not used to navigating it, this has been brought under one roof. Now, very important when you're looking at a municipality is the AG's outcome. These are all the reports. The devil in the detail. You cannot do a story about a municipality without reading the AG reports. And this again will explain to you what each one means: an unqualified opinion, qualified, adverse, etc. Now this municipality has a cash balance, had at the end of the financial year 3 million rand cash balance. And then each time, I'm not going to do it every time I go there, you can compare it to another municipality, but each time in the indicator, you will get an explanation of what the indicator means, how it's measured. And so something happened in Witzenberg. They had a 97 million rand cash balance in 2015-16, 2017-18, 2016-17, 76 million, 2017-18, 98 million. And when I see that, I want to know, there's a story. What happened? Why did that cash balance drop so dramatically? Cash coverage. So here, this is the money that they've got in the bank for day-to-day operation. That is the cash available to them. And this is measuring the length of time in months. So, I mean, the municipality can pay from its day-to-day expenses using its cash reserves. Look at this. I mean, it was 29.8 months there. Suddenly it's dropped down to a month. They've underspent on their operating budget. And as we going through this, please are asked to look here. So how much municipal operating budget then was planned and budgeted for? Again, there's a story. What happened? What happened? They've certainly improved, but they've gone from the black there into the red, and then they recovered slightly. Something is happening there. The data is telling us something has happened there. We need to find out what. Now, they've overspent on their capital budget. Again, indicator, explanations. Now, if you want to know the actual budget, if you say show calculation, I like to look at the audited actual. Oh dear. So each time, what happens with the show calculation, so guys, I'm not even going to go there. What will happen each time is when you go to the, and I'll urge you to go to the audited actual, there's a bug there. I apologize for this. We picked up this bug, and they didn't want to deploy it just before we started the training, but this will be fixed. This takes you to the actual page in the budget. You can physically see it in the budget. This municipality doesn't have great liquidity. I mean, what happened here? Something went very wrong. So this is the money. They earned rates and service charges. Something went horribly wrong there. They grossly under collected in your municipality. When you see this, there's a story there. What happened? Why did this happen? Was there a rates boycott? Something happened here. You know, the data will tell you you've got a test. And then here, where does the municipality get its money from? Locally generated. Again, there's the guide to tell you, locally generated from the central fiscus. And then local income sources for your municipality. Rates and tax, property rates for this municipality, 69 million. Service charges, 30 million. Rental income, 5.4 million. Conditional grants, so this is where the different grants are coming from. The actual source of the grants. So planned income, there's the original budget, and they over collected on the budget there. Then 2018-19, they budgeted to collect 614.1, but they under collected 536. Again, these are all explanations for this municipality. What did where did the difference in planned income occur? So fines, naught, government transfers, licenses and permits, they under collected 2.5. Property rates, they under collected 18 million rand. Service charges, they under collected 112 million. This is what this municipality is spending its money on. 28.1% is going on salaries, and 8% is going to contractor services, consultants, etc. And then finally, there's always stories in this. This should actually be throwing up. Okay, so sorry guys, there's embedded data that should be thrown up. But look at electricity that Reg was talking about. It dropped back, it went up, and then this is their revenue. They're spending very little on community and social services. Look at public safety, how little they are spending. They're spending almost as much on sport and recreation, waste management, water, etc. And again, as you go through this, this will show you who is paying it. So affordable range is kind of the middle. You've got the indigent. So that is a category. You've got indigent receiving assistance. And again, about this indicator, go and have a look there. It's going to explain to you. And each time you've seen this, each one of these is going to set off the story. Who's carrying the burden of rates in your area? This just shows you monthly bills for affordable income over time. You can see how they're rising. Everything is going up and up and up and up. For indigents, and then right at the very end, there are some excellent resources here. This, by the way, this 1 million bags of R1 million is a really good video which simplifies audit outcomes. But as you're going through these things, each time, how did it happen? Who did it affect? Why did it happen? And you've got the explainers. And I urge you at the end of this, when you've got a bit of time, go to your own municipality. Start on the dashboard, move into Muni Money. You will find things about your municipality that you didn't know. And then the final thing that I do want to say is very often people say, well, the data is wrong because I live in that area and I don't see, that's not like that. Well, you live in a part of the area where it's not happening. You know, the data is not lying. All the data is doing is like you get leaked a document, you've got a source, they tell you something, you then start fact checking it, you go in the field to report it. Thanks, Becky.
Great. Thank you, Ray. Thanks for all that. We're going to have some time for those of you who've got questions for Ray. Please do go ahead, drop them in the chat, and we're going to have a little bit of time for Q&A toward the end of the hour. But for right now, I am going to turn things over to Atendiwe Saba. She's the deputy editor, one of the deputy editors at Mail and Guardian. And we're so glad to have you here. Again, for everybody, if you've got a question specifically Ray, specifically for Atendiwe, specifically for Reg, you can mention that in the chat. Otherwise, just drop them in and we'll open up to the panelists at the end. Good morning.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just checking the time.
Good afternoon.
12. I'm sorry I joined a bit late today, but I definitely wanted to be here and had to be here to chat to all of you who have joined. I'm going to share my screen so I can jump right into my conversation that I'm going to have today. This week's conversation, last week I did something similar, but this week we're definitely going to be focusing on municipal finance and how to tell those stories. Let me just make that a bit bigger for everyone to see. So I think the past 10 or so years, I've been covering municipalities in all kind of guises and using a lot of data to work through some of the stories that I want to tell and to give much more credibility to what a lot of people are saying in those specific municipalities. And I'm just going to give you a few examples today of some of that work that has been done and where the stories came from, how did they develop, and how you can use the different municipal finance resources that are out there. So, as I'm saying that we're going to, from the examples that I'll be giving, I will be showing you how the stories develop, the data stories develop, because a lot of municipalities look exactly like the picture that I've just put up on the screen. And there's a host of reasons why that is. And those include where the money is being spent by that particular municipality. Just an overview of today's discussion. I will be looking, firstly, discussing two ways on how to approach data and stories. There will be a section about data-driven stories and stories that are data supplemented. and how you as the journalist can use either way to write these particular stories. And then I'm going to just go through some of the main data sets that I've used over the years to focus on municipal spending and draw that all the way to service delivery expenditure and the services that are received by the people who live in those particular areas. Then I'm going to go through briefly a number of stories that I've worked on, stories that are data-driven and stories that are data supplemented. And then hopefully we'll have some questions and I'll be able to take those as well. All right. Starting with finding your data and using it. There's two ways, and I think I briefly touched on the two ways last week that I have, and I think this came from a question from one of the participants who had joined last week. A question was like, whether do you start with the data or do you start with the actual stories, and which one is the better way? And I had explained that it depends on which stage that you are at in terms of using data. And I would say that for most journalists who are starting out and trying to use data and trying to get stories out of their data, having a story first, having your source or having somebody telling you that this is a particular issue in a particular area, whether it's a person calling you up, one person saying this is an issue in my particular area and I need you to cover it. And then you go to your news editor and your news editor says, well, this is the story of one person. We're not really talking about an actual issue here, right? Then you can use the data to say, actually, yes, this one person says there is this particular issue. And the data actually also shows that the municipality, for instance, has not been spending on water in that particular municipality. Or just in comparison, because we know that we've got district municipalities and local municipalities. Find a district, and in those 5 or 4 municipalities under that specific district, compare them. Is it a trend in all the local municipalities? And this person who told you about the story is your tip-off and can also be your case study. And there's actually data that can back this up. A lot of service delivery issues come down to municipal spending. If any of the participants have spent some time covering municipal issues and municipal elections and municipal finances, service delivery, the potholes, the running sewage in the streets, the RDP houses built or not built, a lot of those come down to the financing. And then the second way of getting stories and using data to get those stories is that the data becomes your source. And this takes a bit more time and a bit more practice with data. But I think with the kind of tools that SANEF is putting together for journalists, you should be able to do like a comparison between municipalities. And in those outliers where it's just like, why is this municipality spending so much, 10 times more than any other municipality? That's where the story is. Those numbers that have escalated so increasingly over a short period of time in comparison to other areas, that's where your story is. That's where your data becomes your source. The data shows you the outliers. Then you have to go to the ground and do the journalism. You ask the questions of the data, and Ray had mentioned that some people say, well, the data is not right. The data are not right. And it's inconsistent. And the same way you would put questions to a source that tells you something is the same way you put questions to the data as well. You need to be able to interrogate the data and what the data is telling you. And if you get to the ground and that's not what the situation is, go back to the data, interrogate it, find out whether maybe this data was collated in a different way from other municipalities. And when you use the data as your source, when you use the data as your source, you go to the communities, you speak to the community members, you find out if this thing is true and how bad is it and how do people have to deal with it on a daily basis. Then go back to the data. People will tell you other issues that they might have. You go back to the data and you check on those issues. Is this something that is quite rampant in other areas as well? So those two ways of using data as either as a source or as to supplement or to supplement a story that you've already gotten. Keep this in mind as I go through some of the examples and talk through some of the tools that I've used and are open to you guys using as well. Keep those two ways in mind, and I will continue to reiterate whether this story was the data first, and then you go and find the actual story, or we got a tip off, and then we use the data to supplement and confirm and broaden out the story. So my main data sets are municipal money. I've been using municipal money since it first came out, and municipal money is such a great way for people to start getting into what municipalities are spending on, what the finances, whether they have money, whether they don't have money, what the income is in comparison to the actual financial performance. Municipal money can get you, it's quite self-explanatory, especially when you are starting with the story already. Somebody's already given you the tip off, and now you need to figure out, why is this particular issue happening in this municipality? In comparison to other municipalities, what is the situation? And municipal money can give you that, especially because I mentioned that a lot of times as data journalists, because we've spent so many years, trust me, it's been years, we spent so many years looking for this data, and we kind of know where to find it now. And we've become so much more fair. We can do those comparisons quite quickly, but starting out, and as a journalist coming in, I know how daunting it might seem. What municipal money has been able to do is to bring it down to a self-explanatory level that you can get it. And it is such a huge resource for anybody starting out, trying to understand what does it mean when you get a particular opinion from the Auditor General? What does it mean when you don't have money? How do you balance? What is the balance sheet, the income and the expenditure? And what happens when you get grants instead of actual money revenue from taxpayers, ratepayers in that particular municipality? Municipal money assists in that. And then I use quite a lot of the Auditor General's reports, especially when the Auditor General has the yearly MFMA reports. Those reports are quite interesting in how they've evolved over the years. You get your remuneration versus service delivery there. Did a story years ago about who's getting paid what in the municipalities. And you can see that some municipalities are paying exorbitant amounts of money for a general manager of some sort. And when you call the general manager himself about how are you getting paid all of this money, he's not even aware. And you'll find that in those municipalities, that's where service delivery is actually not happening. And then you can do municipal comparisons as well, and itemized expenditures as well from the Auditor General's reports. I think most of the data on municipal money is around from the Auditor General's office and from the records of the Auditor General. But if you want to delve a little bit deeper, the Auditor General office is very open to giving you and to explaining some of the terms and some of the comments that they make in there. And those can assist in story direction as well. And then audit reports as well, which basically tell you, part of municipal money as well, they basically tell you what is the health of the municipality. And that comes with a little bit more work in terms of understanding the financial reports themselves. But something for me that has come, and I've covered this quite extensively with the Auditor General's office, is material irregularities that are noted in these audit reports. And that's something that's come about in the past 2 years or so. Material irregularities are cases that the Auditor General's office have picked up, and they can actually give you further information about what has happened to that money. And they are further investigating and will possibly turn those over to the likes of the SIU or to the NPA or the Hawks themselves. There is a trove of stories in the Auditor General's reports about these material irregularities. And that is a story point for journalists to use. In the past MFMA report that the Editor General had put out, I saw that very few people actually used these stories about material irregularities to build further stories about specific municipalities. It's definitely something that you guys should be looking out and using in your stories as well. All right, let's get into some of the stories that I've worked on, and I've decided to break them up into not issues, but municipalities, so that you can kind of get an idea of the municipality and the information that we found and how we got to actually publishing the story. So this specific story was based on a whistleblower within the municipality who was like, there were issues in this municipality. We couldn't get this, we couldn't get these particular services from the municipality because the municipality had to pay these ghost workers or all these new workers at a particular point in time. I think it was run about June, July, August of that year, where the ANC went to Nasrec. And this source told us that these jobs, all these new jobs, were connected to the ANC's Nasrec elections. So the whistleblower tells us that, and then now we have to use data and we have to use our journalistic skills to confirm the details that this person has told us about. That took us, a couple of weeks actually. It took me a couple of weeks back and forth, Free State, talking to lots of people. But the story, yes, the story is important as jobs for votes, scandal rocks the ANC and getting comment, all of that. But it makes it much more, it gives it depth to say, actually, what is also going on in this municipality? What services are people not getting? And in the story, we've quoted people who talk about, well, I haven't gotten this service. And the municipality, the last time it even came to check our drains or our sewage systems or whatever, there's feces running down the street. So you connect this huge scandal that we've been able to find to how the municipality has been spending its money and therefore services not being delivered to this particular municipality. And I think a lot of people, but so many times about Maluti Apofong municipality and a lot of the financial strain that's there. And we wanted to bring that out in this particular story. I think right at the end, it says 5 things about Maluti. And we go into some of those financial issues that Maluti has been having, and yet it continues to do this kind of corruption in that municipality. So if you remember at the beginning, I said I would explain to you how a story would start with a tip-off that has got nothing to do with data, and how we would then use data to supplement that story and make it even stronger. And that's one of the examples. Local municipality is another fun favorite of mine. And we've been covering a couple of stories we've done in the municipality, and I think numerous other journalists have also covered what has been going on at the Vaal River. And it is just a complete eyesore. This is one of the most beautiful places, or it used to be one of the most beautiful places in this country. But what's going on at the Vaal River is that feces are being pumped, sewage is being pumped, live sewage pumped into and leaks into the Vaal River. So my thought process was, okay, I want to do a story around the environment, and I've been reading a lot of these stories, but I want to know what is going on myself as the journalist. And I ended up going to the Vaal River to find out what's going on, and started speaking to the community members. And then in that, so it was me wanting to know more about this. It wasn't the data driving me to there. We get there and we start talking to people, and we see I'd never been to the town myself, but I start to see how the robots are gone. Stop signs are gone. The roads, potholes in the middle of the town, never mind what's going on at the Vaal River. So this to me is already speaking to the inadequacies around financial spending and what is supposed to be happening. So after seeing all of this and speaking to the residents there we have that story. We have to come back and start tracking how much money the municipality is spending or not spending. Where is it spending it? How is it falling through the cracks? And in us asking those questions from the data and sending those questions to the municipalities, people started telling us, oh no, you don't know this as well. Because if we just send questions just around why is the sewage being pumped into the Vaal River, or these community members just say this, now we're asking more in-depth questions because we have those financial reports. We've gone through how much money they've spent here and there and why, and yet you can't see that on the ground. So then the municipality has to answer to those direct questions. It's not people's feelings anymore about this issue. The data shows that you're not spending money where you're supposed to be spending money, only to find out that the municipality has been splurging on a host of other things. And this also comes through from the data and also from the sources that we're getting because of the kinds of questions that we're asking about. Next question, Kagisano Molopo Municipality. Now this one came from the other end, from the actual data. The data was telling us that there's a whole lot of poor communities out there, but there's a weird line item. And I think this came about, I think I was playing around with the AG's data and just looking at municipal reports and finding like interesting line items outside of my last example that I will be giving, consultants. And then I found this entertainment line item, and it kind of shocked me that a lot of these poor municipalities were parting it up. So I started then collecting a lot of these municipalities and that specific line item of entertainment, and then started comparing those municipalities and how much they're actually spending on service delivery. And you find that a lot of the worst municipalities are spending crazy amounts of money on this entertainment. And of course, we went to the municipalities and we asked them, what is this entertainment? Are we talking sandwiches? Are we talking Beyonce coming to dance for the municipality? What are we talking about, to get more details? Because those are not part of the municipal reporting. But then you compare to what the service delivery is in those municipalities, you compare to how much they spend on service delivery, and you find that municipalities' entertainment spending far exceeded not even all the money, just the income from taxpayers in that particular area. And so taxpayers are paying their rates and taxes, you're spending them on these lavish events, whatever these municipalities are doing, and these taxpayers are not getting what they're supposed to out of these municipalities. Then the last example, everybody has talked about, spoken a lot about consultants, and I've covered the consultants issue over a number of years, and we've been looking at different municipalities and why they're spending on consultants. This particular year, when we did this particular story, it was a data-driven story. We started off with the data because we know that there's an issue with consultants, but we wanted to find out which municipalities are spending the most with consultants. And then you find that those municipalities that are spending so much on these consultants, their work, you can't even see the work that these consultants have done. And a lot of them are to report to the Auditor General's office. Municipalities have CFOs and a host of other people under the CFO's office, yet more money still has to be spent from outside consultants. And then how does that affect services at the end of the day? How does that then affect how municipalities spend on the most basic of services that are needed in that municipality? Because now you're spending billions and hundreds of millions of rands on different consultants to do jobs that the people within your municipality are supposed to be doing. Those are the kinds of stories, whether you're starting from the data side of things, and just take an annual report, find just one municipality's annual report, find a line item that's of interest to you, and then start following that up in a small region. You don't have to look even at all the municipalities in the country, but once you start understanding that you can use data that way, just to one municipality, compare it with 5 others. What is the trend in all 5 municipalities? Or going it the other way of getting a tip-off and going to find the data to corroborate and bolster a particular story. I see that we might have questions, but Rebecca, I think I'm going to hold it there, and very happy to answer any questions from my soliloquy there.
Super. Thanks so much for this. It's really interesting. And there's some very interesting conversation going on in the chat and some additional resources. I know Ray has just posted some stuff about spending on capital projects and a water quality tool that relates to what you were just talking about. So anybody who wants to grab those, please go ahead and do so. One of the things that was really interesting that you mentioned that relates to some of the earlier presentations was this sort of like the data can be inaccurate, right? Like, or can be perceived as inaccurate, or it's inaccurate at the time. There were some comments earlier about like, hey, this is data from a year or two ago. It's not in real time. And talking about, wouldn't it be great if we could really see it in real time? And this can happen even with a person you're interviewing who's not basing it on data, right? It's just their personal experience of yesterday or last year. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, or if there's, I'm going to open up to Anta and Dewey first specifically, and then if there's anybody else on the panel who would like to talk about that a little bit more, making sure that, as I think it's important for you as the journalist, but also to clarify that in the story so that the reader can also be confident about the data. Or the source. Yeah.
I think I will have an example when we were looking at municipalities a while ago and looking at how much mayors and deputy mayors and MMs and all those kinds of people were being paid. And municipality or Tambo, MTAT in the Eastern Cape had this guy who was being paid 2 million. He didn't even know what his job was about. But then when we went to these municipalities and this particular person, they're like, no, I'm not getting paid 2 million. And then they're like, well, that's not what we gave to Treasury. And then we had to do this whole thing of trying to figure out, okay, where did the data get wrong? Was it from the municipality? Was it Treasury? Was it in how Treasury inputted for us to be able to use it? So you have to still interrogate, and there will be red flags for you when the data are wrong. You will pick that up. You will know that, so, man, too many people are saying this is not correct. Then you go back, where did you get the data? Who put the data together in this particular thing? Find out if there are other resources like the Treasury's data. The Treasury's data is very similar to the AG's data, very similar to municipal money's data. And possibly go back to the municipality's own annual report and see all those 4 reports. And is that line item stated the same? Is it different this particular year? And make sure that in the story you state that. So if there is somebody disputing it, but you feel that it is still correct because you've done that cross-referencing and made sure that there are other data sources, state that in your story. So they don't come out and say that, well, this data is wrong. But in our story, we stated, however, this particular municipality is saying that they didn't pay this, they didn't pay that, they didn't do this. However, the Treasury, which has the records of how much has been paid and so forth, states 1, 2, and 3. So we're going with Treasury's word on this. Not to say that the municipalities will lie, but this is Treasury data. This is the information that we're getting from Treasury. And on this kind of basis, Treasury works more with these financial flows than the one municipality. So you have to interrogate the data, go to other sources and see if those line items correspond with each other. And in the story, make sure it's not just like with your source, you would find other sources. With a human source, you'd find other sources, or you'd speak to other people to corroborate that. And if that is disputed, you would state that it is being disputed. You would need to do that with the data as well.
Thanks. Isaac, I saw you had your hand up. Did you want to piggyback on that?
Yeah, just quickly. I mean, what we also try and do, of course, is to link the municipal finance stories with the election countdown. And what Atendiwe just talked about, how much mayors are paid. Go and have a look. The IEC yesterday released the preliminary numbers, and they said they'll update it today or tomorrow. So there's about 10,000, just over 10,000 seats to be contested around the whole country. There's about 60,000 candidates, of which only, by the way, less than 1,000 are independents. But 60,000 candidates competing for that 10,000 seats. So it would be great in municipalities to go and do the story now. How many candidates are running for how many seats in a particular municipality, and how much do they get paid? I mean, that I think is just a nice story to do right now. Thanks.
I don't think the candidates list has been finalized. It's still now being scrutinized. So it's been closed, being scrutinized by the IEC, who will then, so I think what you're saying, each event that happens, if you go to the IEC website, you will find a countdown to the election. So even though the election date is in doubt, the election had to be declared, because each is a step along the way that's got to be done. There's got to be events have got to happen. So the candidates have got to be, lists have got to be submitted. They've got to be scrutinized. There's a final list. My point is each one of these events, and you'll find that timetable on the IEC website, is a story. Each one of these, as the election counts down, each one of these mandatory events is a story.
Yeah. Can I just say that I've had experience of reporting on municipal managers and CFOs' salaries in the municipalities. And what happens sometimes is the line item in the budget will be for the office. So it won't be the salary of the individual. So it will cover things like secretaries and other expenses. That's one thing that can happen. And also sometimes it will cover like the car, that goes with the perks. So you have to interrogate that and find out, because I had the similar experience, said to the CFO, but you're earning this huge amount of money. And he said, no, not at all, So yeah, one does have to look very in a lot of detail at what is actually being spent.
Thanks for everybody's perspective on this. Look, I feel like with one question we can actually get into so much detail here as well, right? With each presentation, we see how we can go more and more in depth. This is part of the reason why we're doing this as a series, allowing people to have many different options of different ways to come in. Once again, like coming in using the data early on in your reporting, later have it be integrated in different kind of ways. I want to make sure that we have some time just to cover the, just to let you know about what those additional workshops or rather webinars are going to be coming up. And we unfortunately don't have time to get to all of the questions that were answered here today, but what we will do is we're going to take all the questions that were unanswered in the chat and give our panelists a chance to respond to them in email. We're going to be sending you email with links to the replays from today, as well as the slides that people shared and the links, like the clickable links, all the resources that are here. We want you to take these and implement them and apply them to your stories in your newsrooms. I've just put a link to the evaluation form to give some feedback for today. Again, if you've got extra questions, things you want to make sure that get covered in subsequent sessions, this is the place to let us know. We'll send you a link to that as well. We do have coming up in September, dates to be confirmed, but just to give you like a little teaser of the kind of topics we're going to be covering: the role of the media during elections, disinformation during elections, and the safety of journalists both on and offline. Those who are expecting to be in September, will let you know the dates real soon. And also telling stories with election data will also be coming up. I think that one might be coming a little bit later. I want to give a super big thank you to all of you. I know that this is like a big thing to take this time out of your day and to be here live with us. Thank you to the panelists who came live and to the attendees, those of you who are here. If you've got a final thought, final takeaway from today, we'd love to hear that as well. If you wouldn't mind just dropping that in the chat. If you've been listening for the last 2 hours and you've got something you say, here's the thing I'm going to be able to apply or use or investigate more, please let us know what that is. And I will actually ask each of the panelists, give us that one last sentence. Maybe you want to reiterate something that you've already said, or give us sort of a final thought about what we've talked about here today. I know Atendiwe, you're about to get to a meeting. We're just at the top of the hour. Can we start with you first, please?
Definitely. No, thank you guys for the invite and the work that SANEF is doing. I'm super excited about data journalism, and I would love so many more people to be. And it only takes just starting to do that work. It's just starting to do that work. Look at that annual report. There's so many stories. And as journalists, we want to tell the stories. Let the data help you tell those stories. Thank you so much for everyone for this for today.
Thanks, Ati.
Thank you. Why don't we turn over to Ray next? Ray, what's your one parting thought for us?
Yeah. So guys, the tools do the heavy lifting. You've still got to go and do the journalism.
That's it. That's great. Takeaway. And let's go backwards in time. Reg, what final thoughts do you have for us today?
Yeah, sure. I must support what I think David said, that you can use the data to find stories, which is quite exciting. But really, one of the things that prompted me to start writing about municipal finance again was a whole lot of stories about Johannesburg, which painted the city as being like somewhere in Somalia, and I thought, but how come? Where's the evidence for this? And these stories were evidence-free. But the evidence is there. There's data to back up what you say, and why not use it? And that's my parting shot. Okay.
Thank you. And Isaac, give us
I think it was such a privilege to have 3 of South Africa's top finance and data journalists together and to share their tips and guidance with us. That was really great. Please check back on the SANEF election portal. We will update lots of clips from today, as well as other resources from previous sessions as well. So we will continue uploading more and more resources on the election portal. And if you have anything that you think other people can use, please let us know and we can add that as well. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Once again, thank you so much to our panelists for making the time today. Thanks to all of our attendees who came out live and those of you watching on the replay as well. Thanks to everybody at SANEF and Open Up. Hope you are able to fill in that registration, or rather the evaluation form. Let us know how you are able to make use of today's session, and we will see you on the next one. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody. Bye-bye.